Okay, good vach to all. We were in the middle of a sugya. We saw the sugya of Lishma. We began the perek, Kol Aget, and there were four cases that the Gemara gave of Lishma, one a bigger chiddush than the next. The first case was a person passes by, he hears the Sefer teaching others to go ahead about Gitin. He says, lo and behold, that's my name, my wife's name in the city we come from. You can't go ahead and use that as a get because it wasn't written L'Shem Gerushin. The second case was, if it was, a get was written by a certain man, and it was written L'Shem Gerushin, and then he goes ahead and he changes his mind. And lo and behold, he meets a person who has the same name as him, as his wife, same city, even though it was written L'Shem Gerushin, it wasn't written L'Shma. The third case was, a man writes a get for one of his wives, he can't use it for the other wife, even though he wrote, in this case, again, he wrote it for, it's within the, it's not a strange person, it's within him, he can't go ahead, write it, and use it. And the final case was, he tells the Sefer, listen, you write a get, and whichever one I want to give it to, I'll give it to. And he has two wives by the same name. We say that whenever he gives it, we don't say that that he wrote it for this particular individual. Elawad, it's not a good get. Those are the four cases. Now, let's go to case number 3. Now, here's the case. If I have a shtar chov, and can I go ahead and can I go ahead and use that shtar chov for a particular individual? So, in other words, I go ahead and I have a shtar chov that says Benji owes me money, and there's another Benji in the city. Can I go ahead and say, Benji, can Benji Taina? 1 second, I'm not the Benji, the other guy's the Benji. Well, from the first case, apparently, the case number 3, you couldn't do that. What's case number 3? Where he says, I want to write it for the Gedoyla, and he gives it to the Katana. So it's one person for 2 Gitin. One person lays the stern for 2 Benjis the halva. Again, it's important to get what we're doing is we're paralleling Gitin to borrowing money. So the case of one person with 2 wives is the same case as one malva with 2 loivas, right? So now, if the din would be, I could use it for the one that I did write it for the Gedoyla, then I could go ahead and collect from Benji, and Benji can't taina, oh, well, you wrote it for the other one. Just like this case, the Gedoyla can't say, you wrote it for the Katana, right? So in other words, I would be able to parallel that into saying, well, if he can't divorce the Katana, but he could divorce the Gedola, so we can go ahead and say, okay, so Benji can't taina, that's no chayv, that's the other Benji. That's case number, that's the first diak. The second diak is from case number 2. Case number 2, there's 2 individuals, right? One person wrote the get for his wife, he changed his mind, and then the other person says, hey, I can use that. So now, why would the parallel case to be over there? That another person, in other words, another person cannot collect the chayv. Another person, the person that the get wasn't written from, can't divorce his wife. So another person can't collect the chayv. So let's see the Gemara with that parallel and what the Gemara does with it. Okay, so we're up to Chav Daled Amid Beis. We're about a little past the halfway mark, and we're going ahead and discuss case number 2. Case number 3. Kasav L'Garish Es Gedoyla. He wrote a get to divorce his Gedoyla. Lo Yigarish Boyes a Katana. He can't go ahead and divorce the Katana. The Gemara makes the deal. Katana hu delay matzi megarish. He can't divorce the Katana megarish pay. Hagidoyla, but the Gedoyla matzi megarish pay. So Amarava, as I say, Maris, what do you see from this case? Again, it's one person with 2 wives. So I say, Maris, Shnei Yosef ben Shimon Hadoram be'er Achas, 2 Yosef ben Shimon that live in the same city. Maitzin shtar choyv al acherim. They could go ahead and take a shtar choyv out on others, and the other person can say, I'm not the person that you owe money to. Amle Abai Elamayata, Reisha, the case number 2, Diktani, Shmi Kishimcha. 1 second, you wrote a gift for your wife? Lo and behold, you don't want to use it, but 1 second, I'll save myself some money. After all, it's the same, I want to divorce my wife. It's the same name as mine. The woman's the same name. We live in the same town. Pasal Garishba. Shteni Hudlay Matzi Begarish Bay, meaning I can't use it, but Harisha and the person it was written for, Matzi Megarish Bay. An acher is not able to be mitzi a shtar chayv. So over here you have 2 people, and one can't, and they're not able to be mitzi the shtar chayv. On the since I can't use it, so I'm not able to mitzi shtar chayv. Let's see Rashi on this, guys. Let's see Rashi on this. the Rashi Dibra Masal Ha'armina. Ha'armina b'mislisin the get portion in Masechta Baba Basra. Shnei Yosef ben Shimon Shoya Birachas, two people with right. Ein yochel lo'hitzi shtar chayv zeh al zeh. They can't go ahead and be mitzi one on the other. Nor can another person. So in other words, they can't be mitzi on each other, nor can another person, because they can taina, I'm not your loiva. Right. The Amalei, lo yani levisi mincha, I didn't borrow from you. Ela chaveri loiva mincha, it's my friend. Umas lecha shtar zeh, and he gave you the shtar, and now you're using it on me. The afagav the pligi tanoi chasam, even though there's machlokas tanoim there, the mitzian shtar chayv al acherim. In other words, can they be mitzi shtar chayv on other people? And we're not chayish, it fell from one hand and the other malv is using it. In other words, we don't say that there's two guys, and if one guy's mitzi, that it's really not him, it's the other guy. We're not chayish for that. If this person has the shtar, he must be the malva. And we're not chayish that he dropped it and the other person with the same name is playing the role of the malva. We don't do that. The ein acherim mitzin aleim kidaprishis. So hachanami lema loy baila kosvu ela Yosef ben Shimon acha kosvu liishta. In other words, this case, guys, where we have two people, one guy wanted to divorce his wife, he changed his mind, and the other person can't use it. Mashma, but the first person could use it. Right? He could use it. And the other wife can't say, 1 second, it was the other person who did it. So now, in other words, in this case, what's happening? Two people, one person has the get, he changes his mind, he doesn't want to use it. He throws it away, the other person picks it up and says, great. Right? He says, great. Now, by halva, the other person, right? The other person, an acher, an other person cannot use it. Yet over here, you're saying an acher could use it. And that makes no sense. It should not be able to be used. Good. Just like the other person can't be mitzi a shtar, so too this person that has the get, the woman kitaina, it's the other person who wrote the get, not you. So l'chayru, what do you do with this dialogue over here? So says the Gemara, I'll tell you what you do with it. Says the Gemara, another person can't take out a shtar chayiv. So in this case, why can an other person take out the get? Says the Gemara, it must be speaking that they recognized, right, and they made it that they saw the get. So if that's the case, in the latter case, in other words, if I wrote a get, I throw it away, and Baruch finds it, so Baruch can't use it. But if I go ahead and decide to use it, why does it work? It works because of Eidi Mesira, right? So now, if you're telling me that's the case of Eidi Mesira, then case number 3 also must be speaking about Eidi Mesira. Why did you want to be poishit, guys, with case number 3? You wanted to say that one person who has a shtar can take it out on the other person, and we don't say the other person says, 1 second, I don't owe you money. It's the other person with the same name owes you money, right? Once it's speaking about Eidi Mesira, you have no raya to that yisoid. So that yisoid that you wanted to say, two people in a city, and one person, and he wants to be mitzi from Harry, and there's another Harry. Harry can't tie there's another person Harry. It's not true. Maybe he could. Why does it work in our Mishnah that the Gedolah he could divorce? It's the first Harry in our parallel. It's because the first Harry is this Eidi Mesira that he gave it over, that the Havah took place by first Harry, and therefore you have no raya. So it says El Ma'askal Neymar Eidi Mesira Revelesahi. That must be why the case number 2 works. Hachanami be'edim mesira. It must be speaking about edim mesira, and you can't go ahead and have a raya that if one person is moitzi a shtar on others that you're not chashin l'fila. Maybe you are chashin l'fila. You don't know. Okay. Now, in all these cases, we had 4 cases. Again, let's get the 4 cases clear. It's pretty easy. The first case is the Sefer teaching. The second case is one guy writing for his wife and throws it away, and the other guy picks it up. The third case, he writes it for one woman and he uses it for the other woman. And the last case, he decides the breira who he's going to write it for. Now, if he's a kohen, in any of these cases, do we say that he can't live with his wife anymore? In other words, do we say reach this has a reach of a get, or as we say in Yiddish, Baruch and Kenny, a shmek von get. Right? 30 years I'm saying that. A shmek von get. It smells of a get. So we're going to have a machloikis, a four-way machloikis in this matter. Says the Gemara. Again, the husband's a claim. Says the Gemara. Amarav, kulan poislim b'kahuna, chutz min arishayin. With the exception of case number 1, which it wasn't written for gerushin at all, in that case, if she's married to a kohen, she could stay married to him. But in the latter 3, right, where it gets puzzled, it would go ahead into the extent that would make her usher on a husband. Not divorce. He'd have to divorce her again, but they won't be able to live together anymore. Of course, it's a shmek von get. Ushmul Amar, Afri Shainami puzzle. Shmuel says, guess what? Even case number 1, where it was written by the cipher, teaching them, also would puzzle. But the Shmuel at Hamei, Shmuel goes according to this reasoning. Dama Shmuel Kamakim Sheshanu Chachamim get puzzle. Anytime the Chachamim said a get is puzzle, it's puzzle to divorce her, upaisel, but it passes her from a husband if he's a kohen. Puzzle, it's puzzle to use that she needs another get, but paisel, it would passel her on a husband. Similarly, chalitza psula, when we learned Masechta Yavamis that chalitza is psula, a chalitza that is puzzle, psula upaisla sa. It would passel her from what? From getting married without another chalitza, but it would paisel her brothers from doing gibum. It would be considered a case of kiman shleibana shuvla yivna, if you want to remember that. Since you had a chance to go ahead and do it and you didn't, shuvla yivna. Say puzzle, it's puzzle to the extent that she needs another one, but paislasa, it would puzzle the brothers from performing gibum. B'marava amri, upaislasa min achin. B'marava amri Eretz Yisrael, they said mishmei the Rebbe Laza, smail v'layla, psulais upaislais. Giving chalitza with a left hand, a left foot, right? You have a left foot. We learn that regel from Mitzayra, that it's got to be just like Mitzayra, it's regel yamanis. So too it has to be here. But if you have the chalitza short the left foot, it's no good. Laila, since it's a din in Bezdin, and Bezdin doesn't meet at night, a chalitza at night. So these are 2 cases of a chalitza that's puzzle, upais lois, and the brothers would not be able to do yibum. Amid Aleph. Cotton the anpilia. Let's say it was a cotton performing chalitza, or the shoe was a shoe made of some type of beged, felt or such, meaning it's not a beged of ar, it's not a shoe of ar. Psulois, it would passel, meaning she would not be able to marry the shuk, yet the ain't poislois. But this is not considered chalitza at all. By left and by laila, it's the chalitza psula. By cotton, the anpilia, it's das heishnis kind chalitza. It's not chalitza at all. Memela, she would be able to go ahead and marry one of the brothers. Zeiriyama, again, that is that's in, they said in Eretz Yisrael in the name of Rebbe Laza ben Padas. Zeiriyama kulan ein poislin. He disagrees with Rav and Shmuel. Rav said, guys, the latter 3, but not 1. Shmuel said all 4. Here's the third opinion. Zeiriyama kulan ein poislis chutz mina achrain. The all in the first 3 cases, the case of the Sefer, the case of the person who changed his mind, the case of wife number 1 versus wife number 2, all those cases would not passel. Which would passel? Write me a get, and I'll just choose which one I want to give it to. That would passel. That's Eri. So you have, again, so far 3 shitas. Rav, 1 yes, 3 no. Shmuel, all 4 no. And Ziri, number 4, first 3 no, and number 4 yes. Okay. The Chenom Ravasi kulan in poislin chutz mina achrain. Rabbi Yochanan Amar af achrain nami in a poisel. Rabbi Yochanan goes all 4 would be good. In other words, none of these cases would be considered a shmek von get, because Rabbi Yochanan is of the opinion of ein breira. Once you hold ein breira, so the latter case has no more bearing to gerushin than the first 3 cases. So 4 shitas. Rav, 1 is doesn't passel, 2, 3, and 4 do. Shmuel, all 4. Zeiri, all 3. The first 3 don't passel except the last one. And Rabbi Yochanan, number 4, even 4 don't passel. Mamish. So Rabbi Yochanan and Shmuel are going from one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum, right? Good. Now, we're going to get to the sugya of Breira. So Breira is it's a huge sugya in Shas. We come across it many times. Do we say a latter action defines an earlier a latter event defines an earlier action? So, for example, you go ahead and you take your Erev and you put it in one direction, the other direction, whichever direction my Rebbe comes, I want that to be my Erev Tchumen, going back to Erev. And that was the case of Breira. The act of the Rebbe coming is Huvra Dovle Mafreya. That's where I wanted my 2,000 Amas to extend to. That was a classic case of Breira, right? So over here, what's the Breira over here? He gives it, he has a get written, and he has two wives. Both wives are named Miriam. Both wives are named Miriam. Now he goes ahead and he says, whichever one you write it, and whichever one I want to give it to, it'll be Huvra Hadavar L'Mafreya. Retroactively, it'll be clear that that's the one you wrote it for. So if you say Breira, it would be Lishma. If you don't say Breira, then you don't say Lishma. So that's Rabbi Yochanan's Breira. Another instance of Breira would be Yerusha. Another instance would be Yerusha. When Yarshim go ahead and divide the property, there's two ways to go ahead and view it. It's not clear which one they own. When they divide it up, this one is selling his, whatever chelik he has, he's selling to this one. And this one is selling whatever chelik he has to this one. And therefore, it's a mechira. Since it's a mechira, comes yovel, it would go back to the estate, and they'd redivide. That's if you view Yerusha as lekuches. Each one is buying from the other. There's another way to go ahead and view Yerusha. When I get my property and my brother gets the property, we say it's Huvra Hadavar L'Mafreya, that was our property all along. It's not a mechira. It's when daddy dies. So at that point in time, whichever one we get, it's Huvra Hadavar, that was ours all along, and it wouldn't go back in Yovel. So it won't go back in Yovel. Says the Gemara in Shemitah in Yovel. Says the Gemara. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yochanan Tamei, and Rabbi Yochanan says even case number 4, the case of Breira, would not be a shmek from get, goes according to his reasoning. Dam Ravasi, Rabbi Yochanan, ha'achin shel chalku, brothers who divide an estate, lekuches hein. They consider each one is buying from the other one because it's not defined who owns what. If you hold a Breira, then why do we say each one got all along what they were supposed to get, and the other person had no part of it, and therefore we're not reverting Yovel. But if you say lekuches hein, because we don't say Breira, so now we have two instances of Rabbi Yochanan saying ein Breira, one by get and two by field. Now the Gemara is to make it tzricha, so why do you need to tell me both? Guys, are we good? Guys, we good? Okay. Says the Gemara. B'tzricha. If you tell me the case of get, come Rabbi Yochanan, dein Breira, mishon de being in law lishma. Because you need law, it has to be lishma. Aval hasam mechahu the amrachmana lahada b'yovel. But over there, mecha, the Torah says you have to go ahead and give back in yovel. Aval yerusha matan aloi. So therefore, you needed to tell me that what even this would go back in yovel, that it's a mechira, it's not the yerusha is a mechira. Biashmin and Sada, the case there, Mishum de L'chumra. Guys, maybe he's Mesupik. Maybe he doesn't know Breira or not. So since he's Mesupik, will you machmir and say, you know what, since I don't know what, it'll go back in Yovel. Maybe because maybe ain't Breira, but I'm not sure. Inami or else, Kitchila will go back to the initial where it started from. B'mei Yeshua binun, right? Astei Achuza went for one person, correct? So anytime we're in doubt, it'll go back to that one person, that meaning the mishpacha. We'll get it. Aval hacha emaloi, but over here, which is the kula, guys. If he's mesupik, if you say Breira or not, it's a kula to say that it's not a get. It's a kula to say it's not a get. So maybe over here he'd say, he wouldn't say that. He would say that it's not a get. Maybe he'd be machmir. So therefore, you need to tell me that no, even though it's a kula, he would go ahead and say what Breira. So in other words, each one is telling me in the first lashon. It says for sure you need lishma and it's not lishma. You don't know, and therefore it's no good. Masha'enke sada, you need to tell me that you might think he's mesupik Breira or not. Something the Breira, not it's a chumrah, but it's not, you would be makel lot by get, because by get it'd be a kula if he hold ein Breira. So maybe machmir, kamash malon, he's not machmir, and he holds it's not a shmek from get at all. Okay. Boy mine Rabbi Shia Rav Yehuda. Okay, now we're going down the line, we're going through Breira, we're going through the totally sugi of Breira. Okay? So a little more Breira, just give me 2 seconds. Okay, so we have the sugya of Breira. We have one case of Breira was get. The second case of Breira was what was Yarshim by Lekuchais, and now we're questioning another case. Boy miner of Oishia Mer Yehuda. Amalu Lavler. You say to a sefer, Kosav le'ezer shetetzim b'Pesach tchila. Write a get, and whichever one comes out of my house first, that'll be the get for that person. Mahu, what's the din? So Amalei Tinisuha. You learned the answer. Yes, the case number 4 in our Mishnah. Amala Lavlar, Kosav le'ezer she'ertza. Write it for anyone I want. A garish, right? Pasal a garish boy. Alma ein breira. So you see that one ein breira. Now this breira is a shtickle different, guys. Just to introduce it, in the first breira of our Mishnah, who is it contingent upon? It's contingent upon the man. My decision, right? That's ledas atzmo. In other words, I'm deciding now whichever one I want to give it to. That'll be mine. In this case over here, it's the breira is not up to me. It's up to the acher. It's up to the woman who comes in first. That's a different type of breira. In other words, you're comparing apples and oranges over here. It's true they're both a case of breira, but they're not so similar. One case of breira is ledas atzmo. I'll decide right now which one I'll decide later on which one it is. But you write it now. Versus write it now, and whichever one comes first, that's the one. And I'm not deciding it, it's the one that comes first, okay? Now, before we get that, that's the introductory remark. This case, the Gemara is going to give a case of breira, apparently, and we're going to ask on it. Says the Gemara, what do you see? You say ain't breira. So, Eisivei, ha'oima labanov. The guy says to his sons, listen, harini shoichet es Pesach. Now we know about the Korban Pesach, guys. You had to be, when you shechted the Korban Pesach, you had to be counted in. If you remember Pesachim, right? You had to be counted in. It's geshochten al menuya, on the ones who are counted in. So he says the following: I'm shechting this Pesach al mi sheyala mikem rishon Yerushalayim, on the first one that makes it to Jerusalem, and kima shenichnas rishon, when the first one comes in, roishe v'ruba, he comes in, head and shoulders, and most of his body. Zocha b'chelkai, he'll be zoicher in his chelik of the Korban Pesach, umizake es achiv imay. Okay? So l'chayra, this is breira. In other words, I'm shechting it now. I don't know which one it's going to be, but whichever one it's going to be, he'll be zoicher for himself and other people. So you do see breira, because we're saying this works. Whichever one comes in first, he's zeicha for him and the other. But 1 second, he doesn't know who's coming in, just like he doesn't know which woman is coming at the door first into the right, and right. Just like here also, he doesn't know which son's going to be first. So l'chayra, if it does work over here, then you say yesh breira. This is mamish the exact same case as I'm writing the get now for the one that comes first. I'm shechting the Korban Pesach now for the one that comes first. Exactly the same case. By the get, you say it's not a get. And over here, you say that the son is Zoicha? That's the kasha he asked him. So Amalei, so he said to him, Hasheya Bri, Hasheya, my son, okay, Ma inyan psachim etzel Gitin. What are you mixing up Korban Pesach with get? By Itmar Allah, Rabbi Yochanan, Kedei lezarzan b'mitzvahs. The reason he said this, he wanted to teach him to mezarz them b'mitzvahs. But Zicha, when he shechted it, he had all of them in mind. In other words, you thought that he didn't have all of them in mind, except the one he had in mind, and that's Yikasha. No way, Jose. The reason he told him, whoever gets this first is Zaycha, he wanted to incentivize his kids to come in first. But Einachinami, he had everyone in mind. Because he didn't have everyone in mind, they couldn't eat from the Korban Pesach. It's got to be Geshachna Manuyav. So you're mixing up two different things. It's not a Breira Shaila at all. It's a Shaila. It's not even a Shaila. It's just simply a way of a father going ahead and incentivizes his children to go ahead and be Mazaras and Mitzvahs. Dekinami Diktani, Kim Shenichla Mishaim Roisha Verubai Zacha Bechalkai, Umazakes Achavimai. Iyamid B'Shlema Dim Nua Meikara. Very good if you're going to tell me that he was counting initially. Stop it. Then it makes any sense that it can be Zaychav that they're all there. After Shchita, could you possibly go ahead on and count them in? But Tanam we learned, if they were counted in and they took the hands away, right? Until they shecht it. In other words, but once you're in. So obviously to get them in, he must have counted them all in. So therefore there's no shaykhs to the Shaila Breira. Tanya Nami Hachi, Maisa v'kodmu b'nois labonim. A man incentivizes children, and the girls came first. The nimsu b'nois rizos ubanim shvalim, and they were the son with shvalim. They were like in second place. Okay, now, good. So now we get to the shaila. Amar Abaya, kaboy minei toile b'das acherim. He asked the shaila. He writes a get, and he says, "This is a get almanas whoever comes in first." So this is toile b'das acherim, whoever gets there first. Because Pashalei, and where was he pushed from? Our Mishnah, Toile B'das Atzmai, and where we said Ein Breira by Toile B'das Atzmai. Good. And what was that Mishnah? I'll decide who it is. So l'chayra, it's not a good sushtel at all. It's not a good sush at all. Let's see Rashi over here, guys. Amar Abaya. Kaboy minei atmui mitama Abaya b'Rav Yehuda v'Rav Oishia. Kaboy minei le'eze. Kaboy minei. Le'ezeh shetetzei v'pesach tchila, the tola hamatana b'das acherim. V'kaposhelei le'ezeh she'ertza, the hainu tola b'das atzmai. Dilma tola b'daitai atzmai less than breira. Maybe the first case when it's totally in him, there's no breira. The mida'asnei b'reisha gila b'daitai shahaya poiseach al shtei seifim. When he said, you know what, I'll decide later on. So he shows these guys. He doesn't have a Gemara Das now. He's dancing up two chasanas. Guys, outside. If I were to ask you which case is more of a reason to say Breira that works, I would say it's case number 2. Why? Let's go case number 1. Case number 1, he says the following: write the get, and I'll decide later on who to give it to. So right now, what's he saying? At the time of the action, I haven't decided yet. So Mela, when he hasn't decided at the point the action's done, you won't say that later on decides that action means this person. But in the second case, what's he saying? I'm writing it now, and I'm have a Gemiris Das that this should be a get. When is that get? And who to get to? The one that works in first. But there's a Gemiris Das right now. He's saying, in other words, this is a svar. It's like a shtickle, like a tanai. Here I am. I'm giving this conditionally. Everyone comes in first. But there's a Gemiris Das for what? For get. So we don't understand. How can you compare the two cases? They asked the Alam the Shaila about Das Acherim, and you answer with Das Atzmai. By Das Atzmai, there's a svar to say it doesn't work. Why? He hasn't made up his mind yet. At the time of the Kasivi, he didn't make up his mind. Mashenkin over here, at the time of Kasivi, he did make up his mind. What was his mind made up to? Whichever one works in first, I'm saying right now should be a get. So maybe there you would say Breira. So that's now. Then you went ahead and you dumped in what? This is just putting. Taisa says just this is not really a kasha, but then you went ahead and you asked the kasha from where? From Korban Pesach. Korban Pesach is also told b'das acherim, correct? I'm shechting it now, and the acherim, whichever comes there first. Okay, says the Gemara. V'hada ma'asav la toile b'das acherim. Amar Rav my kusha. Dilma demand islay breira. Loishna toile b'das atzmai. Loishna toile b'das acherim. Islay breira is breira. Umanda leslay breira. Loishna toile b'das atzmai. Loishna toile b'das acherim. Leslay breira. In other words, I'm not going to spoil it your question. Good, you're making a chilik, right? You're making a chilik between the two cases. But be that as it may, you still have to come on to Breira. Be that as it may, when this get is written, you don't know who it's written for. The only way to ascertain who it's written for is either with his das or with the other comes in the door first. Maybe there's no difference. Because you don't say Breira. What's Breira? That an event that takes place later will decide what transpires now. So I don't care what the event is, whether the event depends upon his decision or the event depends upon what? On somebody else. The bottom line is an event that takes place later on cannot define something that takes place retroactively, and so there's no difference. And therefore, it's not a kasha. There'd be pushing from the Mishnah. Ain't Breira, stamazoi. That's what Rav answered Abaya, guys. How we doing? We're good? Okay, great. Now, Amalei Rav Meshashia L'Rava for Rabbi Yehuda, the toile b'das atzmai less slei breira, the toile b'das acherim is slei breira. In other words, you Rav are suggesting that if you don't hold the breira, you don't hold the breira. I'll show you someone who does hold the breira when it's toile b'das acherim, but not when it's toile b'das atzmai. And therefore, we'll go ahead and substantiate a bias kasha on Rav Oishia and Rav Yehuda being Poshit his Shaila. Who is this Rabbi Yehuda and what's the din? Where do you see this? Rabbi Yehuda, the Toileb Das Atzmai Leslie Breira, but tell us going to say Breira. Okay, this is the case of Breira. This was, you were introduced to it many, many years ago when we began the Masechta. This is the first case of Breira because we began with Gitin. Outside, guys. It's Erev Shabbos, and you're not able to go ahead and you don't have kalim. So you're unable to be mafish your trumas and maisa from the wine. If you had kalim, you go ahead and you separate. It's Erev Shabbos, you go ahead and do it, correct? So you got wine from a kuti. You got wine from the kutim. This is before the kutim were Gary MS, guys. And the kutim did not separate truma, and they didn't separate maisa for another person. You might remember, we said the kutim, they darshan liftayevel l'sitim michshol, exactly in front of a stump. Don't put a stumbling block in front of what? Another man. But they didn't go ahead and darshan. You're not allowed to go ahead and set up a person for an avera. Guys, remember this? We did this not too long ago. The kutim said it literally that don't put a stumbling block in front of a blind man. They didn't learn like we learned that. 1 second. Actually, we said that mamish was the pshat. Doesn't mean, it means give a person a bad piece of advice, right? The Rambam brought down. Don't give a person a bad piece of advice that you know that he's going to get messed up in a business deal or some other deal or any other deal. So you're not allowed to go ahead and give a person untithed. Now, this is not the mai. This is not the mai. The kusim do not, but this is a vadai. They don't take, the mai is a separate halacha. It's a suffix derabanan. This is not the mai. So therefore, you have to take off the truma, you have to take off the ma'aser rishon, and you have to take off the ma'aser sheni. If it's the first, second, fourth, or fifth year of the Shemitah cycle. So here's what you do: you say, I got 100 loig, 2 of those loig is going to be truma. 9.8 loig is going to be ma'aser rishon, and X amount is going to be ma'aser sheni. You take coins and you say the ma'aser sheni in this barrel should be mechulul on the coins, which I'm able to do. Then you're able to drink the barrel. And what do you say? Whatever's left in the barrel, the 2 loigim are truma, and the other one is my solution. Now, this is breira. Huvra hadavar lemafreya. Retroactively, it becomes clear that truma was that wine was truma, and that wine was my solution, right? That's breira. Now, who is this Tola, guys? This is Tola b'das atzmai. This is Tola b'das atzmai, right? Good. And Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold the breira. So now, with that introduction, we're going to have Rabbi Yehuda holding there. You don't say breira, but Tola b'das acherim, you do say breira, and therefore you have a biased question that's reinstated when Rabbi Yehuda wanted to be placed the shaila about the get. Whoever walked in the door first, how can you place it from a Mishnah where it was up to him to decide who he wants to give it to? Says the Gemara. The Tanya. Halokeach yaim ben akutim. Ama shnei logim shani asa lahafrish harahin truma. Asara ma'aser rishon. It's the 9.8. Tisha ma'aser sheni. 9 is ma'aser sheni. I said X. 9 is ma'aser sheni. Amid beis. Smile. Umechal. And you go ahead and take it. And I'm taking the ma'aser sheni. Again, remember, ma'aser sheni could be paid the guys, and even Yerushalayim. and I'm meichel the meiser sheni. So what do I have now in this barrel? Truma, and I have meiser rishon. Then Rabbi Meir, you could do it because Rabbi Meir holds a breira. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, those three. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon. Oisrin, it's usher. Good. Now this is a case of toilet b'das atzmai. So what does Rabbi Yehuda hold? Ein breira. Yes. And toilet b'das acherim is le breira. Where do you see that toilet b'das acherim he holds a breira? Okay. Now this is a Mishnah on Daf Ayin Gimel. So I'm going to read it to you. I know you don't have it. So Ayin Gimel, Amid Aleph. I should say you don't have it. Some of you don't have it. Don't raise your hands. Ayin Gimel, Amid Aleph. Okay. Now there's a Mishnah at the bottom. Okay. Now to understand this Mishnah, you have to do the Mishnah on Ayin Beis. Ayin Beis Amid Aleph. Ze gitech mesi. This is my get if I die. Ze gitech michoyle. This is a get if I die from this disease. Ze gitech lachamisa. This is you get after I die. Lo yam klum. Because we know it ain't get lachamisa. However, if he says this is your get, if I may hayoim mesi, may achshav mesi, how is a get? So guys, if he would say the following, this is your get. If I die from this disease. This is your get if I die now from this disease. Now, what does that have to do with breira? You don't know if you're going to die from that disease or not. You don't know. Again, this would appear to be a Tanai, a classic Tanai, correct? This is your get conditionally if I die from this disease. Usually a Tanai is something I can fulfill. This is your get if I don't come from now until 30 days. This is your get if I give you $100. In other words, it's something you can fulfill. That's a Tanai. Over here, I can't fulfill this Tanai, guys. I can't fulfill this Tanai. I don't know if I'm going to die from the disease. Thus creates a breira situation. The breira situation is if he dies from that disease, huvra double mafreya, that it was a good get. Now, is this tali b'das atzmai or tali b'das acherim? This is tali b'das to the Rebbeinu Shalom, guys. This is tali b'das to the Rebbeinu Shalom, right? And nonetheless, Yehuda is going to say it's a good get. So what do you see? When it's tali b'das acherim, yesh breira. So from the case of the wine, Rabbi Yehuda says we don't say breira, and we don't say that it's huvra double mafreya retroactively, that this was the truma and this was the ma'aser rishon. That's toilet b'das atzmai. Toilet b'das acherim. This is a get on condition that I die from this disease. We say it's a good get. It's a breira situation, right? Guys, do you understand this Tanai in breira? Okay, I tell you what. Let's finish the Gemara and go back to. Then we'll go back to a Rashi. I want to finish the Gemara and go back to the Rashi. Okay, says the Gemara. Mahi ba'isa yamim. What is she during those days? Those the days when Michali said, "Rabbi Yudoi mahariyika eishasish l'chol dovereha ulechimaisi havegita," and that's what we need. And when she dies, it's a get. It's breira. You don't know you're going to die from that disease. Only the Rebbeinu Shalom knows. So what do you see? That guys, there's a man who makes a chilik between breira alidei atzmoi and breira alidei acherim. Amalei Rav Meshashil Rava. Rav Shimon the toilet b'das atzmoi less le breira, the toilet b'das acherim is le breira, right? And Rav Shimon says toilet b'das atzmoi less le breira. Again, he said above. In the case, guys, look at the second line of the Gemara. Rabbi Yossi, Rav Shimon, Oisrin. They say that toilet b'das atzmoi. We don't say breira, correct? We don't say breira. Why? Because we don't say that this is truma. We don't say it's ma'aser rishon in the case of the wine. Toilet b'das atzmai less le breira, and toilet b'das atzmai also don't hold. They also don't hold the breira. Amaron. So toilet b'das acherim is le breira. No, he holds a breira by toilet b'das acherim. In other words, we're showing that what the same chilik like Rabbi Yehuda. Toilet b'das atzmai less le breira, like we saw above. Right? Toilet b'das atzmai less le breira. Right? In the case of the wine. Amaron toilet b'das acherim is le breira. The Tanya. I'm boil you now and be mekadosh you with bia on the condition that your father wants the marriage. Reb Shimon ben Yehuda, Oimem Mishum Reb Shimon, Reb Shimon ben Yochai, Rotza Av Mekudeshes, Loi Rotza Av Ein Mekudeshes. So this is Toilib Das Acherim. We say Huvra Hadavel Mafreya when the father decides it's okay that the bia was a good bia. So again, this is a case of Breira, and you say Breira. So in other words, you have a kasha. Let's go back to the kasha now. Let's follow the trail. Okay, let's go over the Gemara outside. Here's the whole trail. They asked Rabbi Oshia was asked the kasha to Rabbi Oshia and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Oshia asked Rabbi Yehuda. He said, "What if a person says to a lavler, I'm writing a get now for the one who goes in first, comes in the door first." So he wanted to be poshed to Shaila from our Mishnah. Our Mishnah is the case of Toilet, but that's Atzmai. He'll decide later who the get is from. That's the case of Toilet, that's Acherim. Says Rava, the one who doesn't hold Breira, one case doesn't hold Breira. In other words, don't make a distinction between Atzmai and what and Acherim, there's no difference. There's no Breira. Says the Gemara, you say that. I'll show you two Tanoim who don't hold the Breira, but that's Atzmai, but do hold but of Breira, but that's Acherim. Both Reb Shimon and Reb Yehuda said in the Mishnah of Kuti that they said, what do you do with this wine? You go ahead and say it's Truma, X amount is 2 logim at Truma, 9 is my Sarishan, right? 10 is my Sarishan, right? And then they say, no, it's not, because we don't hold the Breira, but the Atzmai. Reb Yehuda, by the case of Get, where he said, this is your get if I die from the disease, is holding a Breira. Reb Shimon, who agreed with Rabbi Yehuda by wine, is saying in the case where a man says, I'm boil you on the condition that your father's maskim. Reb Shimon says that the father's maskim, then it's going to be a good bia. So l'chayre, that's why the case of Breira, it's huvadav from Avreya, the kedushin was kedushin. So Haka, you have a kasha. How can you go ahead and be poishit the shaila of what? How can you be poishit the shaila of whether the person walks in the door should be divorced or not? Because we say in Breira from the case of what of our Mishnah. Our Mishnah is in Breira because he didn't make up his mind. The case where he walks in the door, he made up his mind. So too by the case of if I die from this disease, he made up his mind. He's Mekadesh this woman to be, he made up his mind. And therefore what? It should be, you should say that what? Breira, and therefore ain't Breira. You should say Breira, and therefore it should be a good divorce. When she walks in the door, whoever walks in, that's the Gemara's kasha. Guys, the Gemara's teretz is going to be the case of the wine has nothing to do with Breira whatsoever. That's going to be the case. In other words, you thought that what? That the case of wine is Toiler B'das Atzmai. It's not a case of Breira at all. Says the Gemara. Says the Gemara. Hamalei. So he said, Bain l'Reb Yehuda, Bain l'Reb Shimon, Sai Reb Yehuda, Sai Reb Shimon, Leishna Toiler B'das Atzmai, Leishna B'das Acherim, Islu Breira. They always hold the Breira. They always hold the Breira. In other words, my teretz to you is a good teretz, says Rava. The one who doesn't hold the Breira doesn't hold the Breira. Reb Shimon, Reb Yehuda, they always hold the Breira. So if they always hold it, as you could see by Kedushin, as you could see by the get, after I die from Chalizeh. If they hold the Breira, what's the problem? Why don't they hold the Truma's Truma? And why they hold what? The Maisa's Maisa? They could do that. But Hasan Kidik Taima, Amrullah, they told Reb Meir, who says it is Truma and it is Maisa Rishon, aren't you worried that the barrel's going to crack? In other words, you're reading right now, and I hold a Breira, and there's really Truma there, and there's really Maisa there. But aren't you worried after the table, if it cracks, your Truma is going to be gone, you won't be able to give it to the Kayin, and then your Maisa's gone. You won't be able to give it to the Levi. So it's not a, in other words, I take a hold it's Truma. I take a hold it's Maisa, because I hold a Breira. The reason why it's usher to do is because Shema Yibaka Hanoid, which is not a Beri Tekashayla, and Rameir retorted to them, Amalhem L'chashi Yibaka, when it breaks. But right now, I'm not chayish for it breaking. So Mamela, it's not a Shaila of Beri at all, it's consistent. We answered very correctly. The one who doesn't hold a Breira never holds a Breira. No difference between Toilet B'das Atzmai, Toilet B'das Acherim. So therefore, when they ask the Shaila, this should be the divorce when someone else walks in the door with Toilet B'das Acherim, we push it from our Mishnah, where's Toilet B'das Atzmai, whichever one I decide. Right? And there's no Man Diyama who makes a chilik. You wanted to say this, Man Diyama make a chilik, that Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yehuda made a chilik. No, they didn't. They didn't hold Toilet B'das Atzmai. Breira, it wasn't a Breira Shaila, it was a Shaila, maybe the barrel will break. Have a great day.
Apples is Truma. 10 apples in Truma, right? and then I have it in my side of my house, and I start eating my other apples. It's fine. And then those apples get lost, or burnt, or the house burnt. God, whatever. Something happens. So I'm eating already stuff that's already fixed up. I'm eating good food. The fact that the truma never made it to the Kohen is. Am I right about
You
this?
were mafresh. You had distinct. In the case of your apples, you're distinctly have your truma there already. In other words, it was over here. It's huvra double mafreya. What's left over, then it's truma. Why your case of apples? You have your truma. It's there. Over here, where's your truma? You don't have it yet. Only through braver do you have it. That's in the Havmin of the Gemara. So now, Shema Yibaka annoyed is what? Is that you never had it. That's the difference in your case and that case. You never had it. Over there, you had it. Okay, thank you.